run. The header is good, and it's the Thai defender John Tae-wook, and eventually Korea have broken the deadlock.
You're listening to the K-League United podcast, proud partner of Football Nation Radio.
Hello, I'm going to say Ryan Walters in the Kim Do-hoon bunker. We'll still call it the Kim Do-hoon bunker while we can. Why not? And I am joined this week by Paul Neat.
Hello there.
Paul, it's been a very long time since we've been on a podcast together.
It has, yeah. When was the last time?
I don't know. I feel like I just listened to The Weekend, and it's like you're on that podcast, I'm on this podcast, and it's a parallel universes. But we finally got one together, and we brought along George Slade.
Hello. Yeah, it's been, since the Spice Girls, which Dan called the five of us?
What was all that about?
Dan just didn't want to accept defeat for Ulsan, and so he's tried to distract us with the Spice Girls, which clearly worked, actually.
Yeah.
I think
the memory.
The comparison was that you wouldn't remove one of them and still call them the Spice Girls. I don't know. Dan lives in his own world where Ulsan aren't going to choke when the points matter. But we will talk about Ulsan. We'll talk about a bunch of other things. But
And the Spice Girls.
What's that?
And the Spice Girls.
Yeah, well, it's just Spice Girls Weekly now. That's just what we do here. We're going to get them back together. That reunion tour is going to come to Seoul. And in a post-COVID world, that's what we all need, is a Spice Girls reunion tour.
Absolutely.
Actually, I mean,
Spice up your life.
that
That would have been a good first touch. Is your favorite Spice Girl when you were a kid?
favorite Spice Girl when you... Yeah, well, we'll save it for the first touches, and we'll move into the podcast here. Scary Spice, for the record. But...
Mine was Posh Spice.
Would be. George?
I didn't, before my time. I'm sorry. I know the name, but it's not to have a favorite. Very sorry.
Cool. Not only did you throw the Spice Girls under the bus, you also made us feel old. So, all right. Let's shift focus slightly from the Spice Girls. We'll come back to it, I'm sure. And boy, we got a lot to cover this week. We thought that as K-League 1 closed, as we saw Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors lift the FA Cup, the feeling was that we're going into the off season. My goodness, that is not the case, because we have KFA friendlies to talk about, or probably more appropriately rant about, but we will talk about those friendlies and what happened there. The ACL is back, and the K-League teams all were in action over the weekend. We are recording this on Tuesday. There is a game tonight. FC Seoul is playing tonight, so we're just going to talk about the matches that were and kind of talk about what we've seen so far, because, again, the games are coming thick and fast, so the best that we can do is just kind of look back. And then we're going to look back a little bit on K-League 2 and look ahead to the K-League 2 playoffs, where Paul Neath's Daejeon Hana Citizen... How would we describe how they got into the playoffs, Paul? Limped in? Crawled in?
Sleptwalked is what I've been using.
Sleptwalked in, yeah. We'll talk about that. That's one of the many reasons that we've got George here this week. But gentlemen, let's go ahead and get into this. Let's talk about the KFA and the friendlies that were. They had some friendlies against Mexico and Qatar, and Paul, it was absolutely necessary that every K-League player that still has ACL obligations go to these friendlies, right? It was really important.
What a blatant disregard for the players' health and safety, and a blatant disregard for the K-League teams in ACL. It's just, what were they thinking? I mean, not only were they traveling to Europe, and it's quite a fair distance away from Korea and Qatar, but also they headed to what is now a COVID-19 hotspot. You know, at the time, Austria were recording record numbers. It was completely unnecessary. And now, look, you know, we've got teams like Jeonbuk who are down to the bare bones in the fullback areas. It was just obscene. I can't believe that they've done that. Yeah,
it's a situation where I don't understand why those players had to go. And as of time of recording, Cho Yeonu mercifully has tested negative, so he doesn't have COVID. But now he's coming back to Korea instead of going to join Ulsan ACL, So Ulsan, on the back of a season of not being able to get the K1 title, not being able to get the FA Cup, it was kind of this like, okay, well, maybe we can do something in ACL. And George, now they're without their number one goalkeeper. So, like, are Paul and I on one side of this? Are you weighing in on the other and saying that it was important for Paulo Bento to see his squad? Where do you weigh in on this?
No, I'm on your side. I don't really see. I mean, obviously, I know why they want practice, but I feel that like if they couldn't maybe like I don't know negotiate some kind of thing with another maybe Asian nation that's handled it well, like have special exemption to travel to Japan and to a friendly that type of thing, like to go to a safe place nearby, but. I feel that if they couldn't do that, then there's no point in doing it unless they did something really creative, like was suggested a while ago, like the K-League Koreans versus the K-League foreigners type thing, something random like that, and just give them a goalkeeper, you know.
But the Thai League did that. Thai League did that. They did the national team versus the Thai League All-Stars, and it was very interesting. I mean, I wish they would have done that here instead of the U23s facing off against the senior national team, because I don't really know how much there was to gain from that one. But that one, okay, all the players were here. Like you were saying, Paul, that's a safe environment. Let's keep them here, where we've had one player all year in K-League test positive for COVID, and that's because he went out in Seoul. It wasn't something from the club, and that was with Daejeon. It was one player, and it was handled, and the league shut down. And K-League has done so well this year, keeping everything under control. And then the one time that all of these players are sent abroad, I mean, I guess that's my other thing on this is like, there are enough European-based players for a couple of friendlies, that you don't need to take these ACL players. Gu Sung-yoon ended up playing in net because Cho Yeon-woo couldn't play. Okay, fine. If you're going to take players from K-League, if you're going to take Korean players from the league, then get guys that don't have ACL. Gu Sung-yoon's a perfect example. Kang Hyun-moo also doesn't have ACL. Go ahead and see what he's got in net. Why are you taking Cho Hyun-woo away from Ulsan? It's baffling.
On the subject of selection, though, that is a good point about Kang Hyun-moo. He's an excellent goalkeeper, and although Lee Chang-gun's had a good season, you would think that Kang Hyun-moo would be ahead of Lee Chang-gun in the queue for a call-up for the Korean national team. I mean, I don't really know why Lee Chang-gun went when Kang Hyun-moo was on the fringes of. It was very close to going to the Asian Games a couple of years ago. I'm not sure how he's fallen down the pecking order when he's had a good season.
Yeah, he had a great season for Pohang. And I mean, my thing is like, they're friendlies. This isn't Nations League. Like, this is when you should be getting a look, especially in a year like this. This is when you should be getting a look at the players that you can't usually see or don't usually see and that don't have obligations. But anyway, here we are with the K1 MVP and arguably the best goalkeeper in the talent pool out of ACL. But let's talk about the matches themselves very quickly because, okay, sure, fine. Korea ended up losing 3-2 to Mexico. Hwang Hee-jo got on the scoreboard for this one, and so did Kwon Kyung-won. They ended up not winning this one. I think that with Mexico right now, I think we're starting to see a little bit more of a duopoly in CONCACAF again, especially with the young talent with the United States and Mexico's young talent. I think they're looking really good there. So I kind of had a split focus in this one, looking in two different directions. But George, did you watch the Mexico match? Because I know this was on at an odd time for us here.
It's a very odd time. So I've just seen the highlights. So my notes kind of consist of 4 words of attack good, defense bad, it seems.
Okay.
As a bit of a summary. Because, like going also, if you compare it also with the Qatar game as well, like it looked like there's kind of not too many problems going forward. They can score goals, but they seem to be kind of easily picked apart by like one pass can completely rip through a defense and things like that. So, yeah. Not the best performances, but not the worst, considering they've not played for a year.
Yeah, and to just go ahead and throw the other one in there, they did end up beating Qatar 2-1. Hwang Hee-chan and Hwang Hee-jo again on the scoreboard there. So Hwang Hee-jo doing some work as usual for the Korean national team. And yeah, I mean, this is also just a big part of the problem for me is that there aren't a ton of takeaways from this. So to me, again, it should have just been about getting the Euro-based players together just to see how they gel. But Paul, what were some of your takeaways from these friendlies?
I have two, actually. I think both of the goals by Hwang Hee-chan and Hwang Hee-jo, they were proper striker goals. They're in and around the 6-yard box. Now, Korea have lacked that kind of striker for a long time. Bento has tried different players there. He played Ji Dong-won when he first took over. And if these two players who are not really out-and-out number 9s, they like to sort of drift out wide, if they can somehow try and adapt their style of play and be somebody who can be in the 6-yard box and in the right place at the right time, then Korea might have finally a striker. So they've shown that.
Yeah.
Also, I think at the back now, there was obviously a lot of players missing, but Wondu Jae playing as a centre back was it just shows that when Korea are going to play against teams where they're going to have a lot of the ball. So, for example, Turkmenistan against Sri Lanka, North Korea as well. Having two normal centre backs is a bit of a waste. If you're going to have a lot of the ball, having a midfielder play there, like Hee Sung-young played there a few years ago, it just makes a bit more sense in terms of the build-up play. So having Wondu Jae, who's his first full season in Korea this year, was excellent, and then he just slotted right in there with the Korean national team, played very comfortably at centre back. That was also something that I thought was a very good thing to see, and it just shows that that he can play in different positions. So those were my two takeaways.
Yeah, and Wondu Jae, we should say, mercifully is training with Ulsan in Qatar right now, so we might actually see him with his side in ACL. Yeah, tremendously versatile, and I think that's a really good point there. I don't love seeing him at center back, but the way that you put it, I think that's a good point, that it's not necessarily, he's not going to be clearing a ton of crosses, heading the ball or anything like that. It's more about playing out of the back. So, yeah, I guess that's a good positive thing to build on there. But I still just really wish that he wasn't there. But is what it is in that regard. Yeah, so anyway, we're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the team that we hope he'll be joining up with in Qatar. We're going to talk about AFC Champions League. We'll be right back.
Fans, we want to hear from you. You're encouraged to email KLU at info@kleagueunited.com or tweet at KLeagueUnited with any questions, comments or reactions. Or follow us on Facebook to ask directly during one of our live shows.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, joined by George Slade.
Hello.
And Paul Neat.
Hello there.
And it's actually kind of weird just having like a regular old 3-man booth again. I feel we had the awards, we had people all over the place for ACL, and we're not even doing this thing live. It's just, it's so strange. Anyway,
Relax. I mean, my pajamas is great.
I don't leave my pajamas these days.
Why would you?
This is one of the reasons we're not live. People don't need to see what my life is like every day now that I work from home. This is I will say the Chicago Fire had some really good merch about 10 years ago, and I still wear the same hoodie almost every single day. Don't worry, I wash it. Anyway, let's talk about something that the Chicago Fire are not familiar with, and that's international football, gentlemen. Let's talk about the AFC Champions League. And we got a couple of things here. I want to talk about the matches, but I also, let's go ahead and get started with this aspect of it before we get into the matches. I'm enjoying this format. And Paul, I know you've had a couple of conversations with Dan Croydon. I've also talked to him a little bit. You know, we've been touching base about Ulsan and everything else. But he said that this would be a good way to move forward for the group stages, and I actually tend to agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, it's like a World Cup where there's games on almost every day. There's multiple games per day. And if you can find a way to watch some of the games that aren't involving the Korean team, it's great. And that when you're watching a World Cup or European Championships or anything, and you're watching a random group stage game that isn't a team that you have any kind of affiliation to, that's great. Like Morocco versus Nigeria, it's like, yes, this is great. Like for the real nerds like ourselves, it's really good, you know. And yeah, I mean, the AFC Champions League is a competition that I like, but I think it needs a bit of a freshen up. Format change wasn't something that I'd thought of, but then when Dan Croydon said that on Twitter, I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. You know, I want more varied teams in, so maybe an expanded group stage. But yeah, if we had like, if we were able to get some of the Southeast Asian teams, if they could host a tournament, then that would be like a World Cup style situation where the host nation automatically enters the competition, and then that can help improve sort of football in those countries and that kind of thing. So yeah, it would be great to have as a thing to do now and then. I'm not sure how it would be really possible, but yeah.
I mean, the thing that I like about it is the idea of like a central hub per group, maybe even. So maybe you've got a group in Japan, a group here in Korea, maybe one in Thailand or Singapore, even based on the teams that are going to be in it next year. But George, is this something like, what do you think about the format this year? Is it too many games too quickly, or is this something that you hope to see in the future?
Yeah, something I hope to see in the future. I mean, obviously, I think this year's a bit different because they're still trying to do the 2 matches per team in the group to make up for the original schedule. So I'm guessing if they did it in the future, it would be a lot more like a World Cup of you just play each other once probably and reduce the matches. So if it was like that, and then, yeah, maybe like a different like host nation per group, or like a different host nation per round. Like, I don't know if you'd want to do like the knockout stages as part of this hub thing as well. But I think there's a lot of different options that they could explore. Like you could do group stages somewhere, and then like quarterfinals and the last 16 and quarterfinals somewhere else, and then semi-final and final in another place. So you could just kind of get them done in 2 or 3 periods a year. So it's not disrupting the domestic schedules too much, potentially. So I think, yeah, it's definitely something to look at for the AFC.
Yeah, I love the idea of reducing the amount of travel for teams as well, because we know that's one of the big cost barriers for a lot of teams. I mean, even the Korean teams are going to really struggle with that, and that's before we get teams with smaller budgets, like from Thailand, from Singapore, from Australia right now, talking about A-League teams. And yeah, Paul, like you were saying, I like the idea of it, like having that kind of like festival atmosphere around it. And even if it is just, George, like you were saying, it's just they play each other once. Okay, well then let's get the groups here in Korea for one. Like if we had one group here, and let's have it in Busan in the summer, why not? How much fun would that be? Have a couple of games over the weekend with international teams playing, go to the beach in between. Lovely. Sign me up for that. Love it. So hopefully this is something that we see moving forward, but I mean, that might be one of the odd silver lining positives to come out of this edition in 2020. And, we're almost done with this year, and I think it's time to start looking for the silver linings in what has been a year. We'll just thank you 2020 for some things, but please be done soon. But anyway, let's move on to the results as they were. Let's start with FC Seoul. They got kicked off in Qatar with a 2-1 loss to Beijing Guoan, or Beijing FC as they are known officially. And Paul, you cover FC Seoul. This wasn't too surprising of a result, but I thought they looked good.
It looked okay in spells, defensively very poor. For the first goal, that was awful. What was that? A pass across the back from Kim Jin-ya was completely avoidable. Second one was a great strike. You can't really stop that. But I thought Seoul looked okay in spells. They've got a very young squad, and it's going to be a learning curve for some of these players. And they didn't look too bad. They might have got a draw. Han Chan-hee was really good. He forced a few saves from the goalkeeper. And maybe I wasn't surprised by the result, but having watched the highlights back again, I thought maybe they could have got a draw.
Yeah, I think a draw would have been a fair result. They didn't look too bad, but I mean, the thing for me with FC Seoul was the thing that it's been all year. Who's going to score a goal for them up top?
Yeah, they really are lacking a striker. And Park Ji-young got a penalty, as he often does. And really, they had to settle for long-distance shots. They looked like they could score only from outside the area, or a set piece. That they're the only two real ways for Seoul to score goals, as it has been for the last 18 months, really. Yeah, and you don't necessarily see that changing too much. Again, they are going to be in action again against Shanghai United, and I think maybe they'll attack that game a little bit more, but
based on having seen a little bit of Shanghai, I don't know how well that'll work out for him. But again, by the time most folks are listening to this podcast, that game will have already happened. So we're not going to go into that one too much. But yeah, we'll see from Seoul. To me, again, it was a lot of the same that we've seen in the league, which we'll move on to the next match, and we'll come to you for this one, George. It was Ulsan Hyundai 3, Shanghai Shenhua 1. And that one for Shenhua came kind of late. And Ulsan looked dominant.
Yeah, because and considering that they've, like we've said, we've lost their key goalkeeper through the friendlies, so it's good that they were able to make up for that by having a very good attack and score some quite impressive goals. Like Jeonbuk Hyundai's 2 were very good, and Kim Gi-hee's was a very interesting header that was very good. I'm not sure how much he meant that, but I think this is very positive. So it is definitely possible that Ulsan Hyundai could kind of not necessarily save their season, but have a good tournament to end on after having their domestic season ended in quite a sad way. So out of all the Korean teams, they definitely look the most impressive, and I think they're potentially the one that could progress the furthest in the competition.
Yeah, I agree, George, and this is what I have in my notes as well. They do look like the sort of most equipped for this. They look very comfortable, I thought, without even getting out of second gear. It was all kind of not a slow pace, but they didn't really need to go fully at Shanghai Shenhua, and they look really comfortable, and it kind of bodes well for the rest of the group stages.
Yeah, Jeonbuk Hyundai getting a brace in that one. His first goals in ACL since 2012, just a scant 8 years in between there. But I thought he had a really good performance. And like you were saying, that second goal was just outstanding.
This is a very lovely finish, with some good passing building up to it. It was almost like from a training ground. It was like something that, the manager couldn't have prepared more perfectly. It's just, considering they were the only team to win, they won very well. It wasn't like a scrappy, 1-0. It was a very, very impressive performance. So Ulsan Hyundai, maybe they could steal some silverware. Maybe.
Yeah, the silver lining will be some silverware for Ulsan.
Yeah, Ulsan indeed did look really good in their match. One match that... moving on a little bit to a match that we don't necessarily have to talk a ton about because, George, like you said, Ulsan was the only K-League team that got a win over the weekend. Suwon Bluewings saw out a 0-0 with Guangzhou Evergrande. And, I mean, it's a good result for them. I think it's pretty impressive considering Evergrande, the roster that they have and the expectations for them. Suwon don't really have any striker at all. And as opposed to the match itself, the thing that's kind of surprised me a little bit here, well, 2 things that I would like to talk about in this one. Park Gun-ah looks like he's doing a pretty damn good job with the Bluewings. Except, why would you not bring Krpic? He's there. He's on the roster. He's an option up top.
No, he's not. He got released.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know why they released him right before ACL.
I think
you might as well go, just have some sort of option up top. I mean, I think they expected Taggart to be there, and then he picked up a knock, but it's odd that they didn't bring some striker depth. I think it was weird to release him right before ACL.
They must, like you said, they must have not expected Taggart to get injured because, they haven't got any strikers. And although it was a very, very good result, because I think Guangzhou Evergrande are probably one of the favourites to win it. Their squad is very, 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 very good. I mean, they've got 7 foreigners, really.
Well, technically not, but yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they have 7 players who are born overseas, let's just say.
That's the distinction we'll use there. I like that one, yeah.
And they're a very, very good team. So to get a clean sheet against them is very, very, very good. And also, I thought that there were some young players that managed to come on and make their debuts. For example, Jong Sang-bin came on for them, and Kang Hyun-muk as well. So I thought that they have a lot of positives, and they're going to have to try and rely on some long-distance screamers from Ko Sung-bom. That's probably the only that's the only option that they have, really. Because otherwise, what else have they got? They had Kim Min-woo and Im Sang-hyuk up front, 2 not strikers. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for them, but they dodged a bullet with JDT not being able to travel for this one, because I think if JDT's there, they make it out of this group just based on form. And I mean, that's a big old shame, because I really like that team and I really would have liked to have seen what they could do. But Suwon, they've got a chance to grind out some results and maybe get out of this one. So we'll see how things go there. But let's move on to the final team that we haven't talked about yet. And this is an odd situation where we're going to talk about Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors losing. They lost 2-1 to Shanghai SIPG. And George, to me, this came down to the bench options. When you can bring Hulk, Oscar, and Aaron Moy off the bench, that's pretty good. That is pretty good. Whereas Jeonbuk didn't have that option. Is that where this one went wrong for Jeonbuk, or did you see something else in this one?
Well, I mean, that's a big part of it. They're obviously fairly exhausted as a team, coming from doing a double, having to commit to 2 competitions, and for them going right down to the wire in terms of the league, right down to the last game of the season. So they probably haven't had a lot of chance to rotate their squad prior to this, and they're coming straight into this tournament. So having a team like Shanghai, having just that firepower, that Jeonbuk just simply don't have, it was always going to be very difficult for Jeonbuk to come away with a result. Having said that, though, there was some things, like some decisions, like, penalty calls and not calls and things like that, which,
for example,
in a different world, or maybe with VAR, I don't know, could they've been given, and Jeonbuk may have actually snuck at least a draw potentially from that. I don't think it was like the worst performance, but I think because we're just so used to seeing Jeonbuk winning everything, that I think it's the shot factor, that type of thing. It's, in our minds, our perceptions change a little bit.
Yeah, Paul, and I think Jeonbuk, they are not in good shape here. 1 point from 3 matches, and that's the thing. The SIPG has only played 2 matches here. They already have 2 wins. Yokohama's only played 2 matches. They already have 2 wins. So Jeonbuk's up against it, and they're still without K1 MVP Sun Jun-ho.
They are without him. They are without really more than one fullback. I thought Chechol Soon was excellent, but played on the left. Koo Ja-young, a centre-half, played at right back, looked a bit shaky, as you would expect. But, they've got a lot of players missing, and you could tell that because, like you said, Ryan, the options they had on the bench compared to what Shanghai SIPG did, they brought on some young kids. Lee Shi-hon came on, Lee Sung-yoon as well. Whereas, the talent that Shanghai had was really chalk and cheese. I mean, I would also say that there's some players like Cho Gu-song just isn't at that level yet. I don't think that he would have played as many games as he has if he wasn't 22 or younger.
Yep.
He doesn't look good enough really yet. Murillo, I'm not sure about him either. Again, I think if Jeonbuk had Son Jun-ho fit, maybe put Son Jun-ho in midfield and keep Shin Hyung-min in that DM role. Yeah, I just think that Jeonbuk, they are just stretched very thin, and it doesn't look good. Yeah, like you said, 1 point from 3 matches. You would hope that they can somehow turn it around, but it's going to be very difficult now.
Yeah, we'll see if they're troublemakers, as the K-League branding. I like it.
That.
I think it's pretty good. Yeah, so we'll see what can come from them. But the weekend as it was, not necessarily the best from K-League sides, but maybe next week we'll have a little bit more to talk about. But for right now, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about what everybody actually wants to talk about. We're going to talk about K-League 2, and I've got a little bit of rage in my heart for this one, but we'll be right back.
FNR is a revolutionary football-dedicated digital platform, the first of its kind in Australia. It provides a 24/7 live online radio platform experience, podcast hub, and acts as a content provider for TV, radio, and digital. Having reached millions of listeners and football fans since launching, FNR is accessible worldwide via its website or app, providing a platform to discuss, debate, and celebrate the world game. We are your voice of football, FNR Football Nation Radio.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, joined by K2 experts, George Slade and Paul Neat. And gentlemen, okay. Let's let's just jump into this. Paul, we'll talk about your match second. Round 27 of K-League 2 happened over the weekend, and boy, what an entertaining one on chalk, on paper, where we had 4 teams that all had mathematical chances of getting into the playoffs. Obviously, only 2 could, and 2 of them that did not were Seoul E-Land and Jeonnam Dragons, because they saw out a 1-1 draw at Jeonbuk Stadium here in Seoul. And I usually reserve this a little bit, but I would like to burn all VAR technology to the ground.
No. We need to install it in every single game, in every single country. It is a wonderful piece of technology. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Ryan, I feel like, you know that scene in The Simpsons where Bart has like a catchphrase and he just gets sick of saying it because the enthusiasm is drained out of him completely.
Yeah.
You with your ain't no part like a K2 party. It's like, go on, Ryan, say the line, say the line.
Oh, man, this one was nuts. This one was absolutely insane. There were, I think, Julian Kristoffersen scored about 17 goals in this one. He was allowed to keep one of them.
Yeah, I think he managed to beat his entire season record as a professional footballer in one match.
Yeah, and they all just got chalked off. And look, okay, so we'll start with those. We'll start with the offside calls. And those were correct. Upsetting, but correct. Especially the last one, which looked to be a late game winner to put them into the playoffs. He was off by a little bit on that one. The first one, and this is the kind of crap that we're seeing in EPL right now, he was off by his earlobe. Like, we're talking centimeters, and this has got to change.
The offside rule now is obscene.
We can't be doing this. This is not... We are going to lose fans in this sport because of crap like this. Like, he does not have an advantage because his left ear is offside as he's going for the goal. And yes, by the letter of the law, it was called correctly. So I'm not trying to throw the ref under the bus here. We'll talk about him in a minute. But George, this is so pedantic, and to me, it's just killing the flow of the sport in general.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I've seen some perspectives that I agree with they should probably maybe start to change offside so it's based on where your feet are, where your legs are, because that is the actual part of your body which is going to be engaged in the sport. You know, anything upper body, really. I mean, obviously you can head the ball, but it's still not the same as being some centimeters or meters physically ahead of someone where you can get some extra space to sprint and run. You know,
right.
It's not the same thing, is it? So I think that is, if they're going to keep it with this type of interpretation of the slightest bit of body part is offside, I think they need to change what body parts are considered offside and make it only legs or feet.
That's a good point, because let's say if you're a goalkeeper and you are holding the ball, but you're very close to the edge of your penalty box, but your elbow is out, is that handball? Yeah. Or likewise, if you stood at the, stood on the, you know what I mean?
These are the kind of conversations that, I don't want this as part of our game, you know. And I caught up on the MLS playoffs over the weekend, and oh my goodness, if you haven't had a chance yet, and I don't even know if you guys have had a chance to look at this yet, in Orlando. They went to a penalty shootout because it's the playoffs. It has to be knockout. And the goalkeeper saves a penalty for Orlando. It looks like they're done. And the coach, Oscar Pareja, goes into the locker room. He thinks his side's won. He goes in. He's ready to greet his team. He's ready to go. And then we see the very familiar ref with the hand on the ear, the sign of doom, to me, the sign of our game is being killed. I'm so tired of this. Please, sir, may I celebrate? Anyway, so they called the keeper off of his line. He, in my opinion, he wasn't. His heel was on the line. But again, these are the kind of conversations that I hate having. So then anyway, they made a whole debacle of this. They allowed Orlando to make a sub, which any idiot knows that you can't sub in a penalty shootout. They allow them to make the sub. The backup goalkeeper comes in, looks like he's about ready to take it. They say, oh, nope, you can't. Remove him. A field player comes into net, eventually saves a penalty, and Orlando wins this thing. So, the takeaway was, ooh, what a dramatic story. This is so great for this field player. But to me, the takeaway is, what the hell are we doing with VAR? Like, that match should have been done when the goalkeeper saved it. And that's in the MLS playoffs. Back to K-League 2, this match, Seoul E-Land and Jeonnam, should have had a penalty in it because there's a handball at the end that doesn't get called despite it going to VAR. And handball is another one that, like, to me, VAR is it's putting refs at a disadvantage because they know that they can just lean on this technology and they don't have to be as decisive as they've had to be in the past. They don't have to have the conviction of their calls. And to be quite frank with this one, they also don't even have to get it right because I don't care what the handball interpretation is. We can see the ball go up and hit the defender in the hand that his hand is flopping around in the air, and we still don't get the pen on this. So if VAR is not going to get the calls right, and it's going to me, it's taking goals away. And that's my issue. I don't care if the Dragons lose this game. That's fine. Good for Seoul E-Land to go ahead and get into the playoffs. Losing is not my issue. The fact that we have this stop-start, back and forth, can we celebrate? When is the game going to happen? It to me, that's my frustration with this game. Not that Jeonnam narrowly lost out on the playoffs. It just was so frustrating to watch as a fan in general. Never mind a fan of one of the teams playing in this. But am I too close to this situation?
Maybe, but I've got a theory about VAR, and when a referee, like, we're watching it on TV, and you can see, okay, that's definitely handball, that's definitely offside. He will definitely call this, and then the referee doesn't. Mm-hmm. I've got a theory. When you are in a car and you're driving, and you are going a little bit too fast, but the person in the passenger seat says you need to slow down. You know 110. So no, it's the angle that you're looking at the speedometer. That's the thing. So when the referee isn't looking at the TV dead central, then he can't quite. Is it offside? I don't know. Is it handball? I think it might be chest. It's the same thing. You have to look at this. You have to make sure. In fact, they need
need a spotter.
They need a spotter, a crosshair on the screen, so that he knows that, okay, I am now dead central. Yeah, offside. Nailed it. That's it. But I only saw the last 6 minutes of this game because I was watching, obviously, the other game.
Yeah.
And that game finished earlier than the Seoul Jeonnam game. And I couldn't believe that it was 6 minutes of added on time. I was in absolute agony because any goal from either team meant that team was in the top four. Daejeon had missed out. And it was just the most excruciating 6 minutes of my life. It was awful. And then in the 97th minute, Kristoffersen scored what he thought he'd scored, and I just couldn't believe it. But then, because he'd had like 15 goals chalked off already, you could see in the way that he celebrated that he was like, I'm not sure.
See, and that's the thing for me. And again, that's the correct call. He's offside on that one. That's the correct call. That's fine. But I'm just so tired of this, like, ooh, we scored. Can we celebrate? I'm tired of it. But we'll move on.
The K-League 2 party is like that party that Superhands has on New Year's Eve in Peep Show where it's gone full horrible. You know what I mean? It's the heart of darkness. It's the heart of darkness, and once you're in, you can't get out.
Speaking of heart of darkness, let's move down to Changwon, where your Daejeon Hana Citizen, I love that stadium, actually. I have nothing wrong with it, but Daejeon Hana Citizen didn't win the game, but they won on the day because their 1-0 loss still meant that they got into the playoffs. And this, we'll talk about this match again because it's coming up again for the first playoff, which is coming up Wednesday night here in Korea. Again, we're recording just before that. But Paul, kind of quickly on this one, and then we'll take a quick break and come back and preview it properly. But quickly on this one, any takeaways from this match before you do the same thing again this week?
We were frustrating in the final third again. They made some good saves. Their keeper, I think without him, it would have definitely been at least 1-1. Perhaps we could have shaded a win. But the goal was just a long ball forward. The defender, I don't know what he's doing there. He heads the ball across goal. I don't know why he's doing that. And then Do Dong-hyun, he sends Eong-hee for a hot dog or maybe some tteokbokki, wherever it is that the Korean equivalent is. And then he scores. It was a great goal. But for Daejeon, it just seems that all the hard work and all the things that they did well last Wednesday against Anyang, they were back to square one again. And the decision in the final third was absolutely awful. And very, very lucky to have sleptwalked into the playoffs because they don't really deserve it. And on Saturday, it was kind of muted celebrations on my part because we just didn't deserve it, really, you know? And especially when you look at how much effort E-Land put into it against the Dragons, I just thought, I feel like we've cheated our way in there a little bit. We didn't really deserve it. But I'd rather us lose again on Saturday and then win on Wednesday. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. In wrestling terms, it's like the heels made it in instead of the faces.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Which, as you know, the babyface always wins in the end. So maybe the Reds will beat the Purples.
I was going to say maybe the Dragons are going to win it all next year with Sangju Sangmu coming down. It's totally going to happen.
Cashing their money in the bank.
We'll get George back in here in a little bit. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about Gyeongnam versus Daejeon and the winner of that match coming all the way up here to Suwon on Sunday. And that's going to be a tall order. But we'll be right back.
Ulji Lewis is your neighborhood British bar and cafe located in the Old Jiro district of Seoul. Decorated in old English antiques and furniture for a true homely feel, you can enjoy homemade scones, cakes and afternoon tea during the day, and traditional British favorites like beef stew, English ale, and a fine selection of wines at night. Available for private parties or simply an evening out, Ulji Lewis is sure to become your favorite neighborhood pub. Be sure to mention K-League United at the bar during your visit and you'll get 10% off your bill.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, talking about the final edition of the party that is K-League 2 because the playoffs are coming to a head. This year's just all over the place. I'm joined by Paul Neat and George Slade. And gentlemen, let's talk about Wednesday night, which again, for a lot of the folks listening to the podcast will have already happened. And it's a match that has already happened very recently. It's Gyeongnam FC versus Daejeon Hana Citizen, again in Changwon. And Paul, you had a recent stat about this, that it's been a long time since you guys won down there.
Well, we've only won there twice in 33 total meetings and 18 trips down there. And it's been a long, long, long time. I'm pretty sure it is since 2006. I'm just having a quick look on Soccerway as we do this. And so it's been, at least 15, well, at least 14 years. So the fact that they have to go there and they have to win is making it a bit of a tall order. I'm not convinced that Daejeon are going to get through this, to be honest, because it's just been too long. In fact, 2006, they won then, and in 2007, so they won. The last one was the 15th of August, 2007. So
just a little while ago. I was just about done with
years.
uni at that time, actually. So
really, I hadn't even started yet. I went to university a bit late.
George wasn't even born, based on our conversation about the Spice Girls earlier. So, George, let's bring you in here. Let's get an outsider's perspective on this Gyeongnam Daejeon match, because Paul's obviously very close to it, and I just want to watch all of the playoff teams burn. No, I'm kidding. What do you think is going to happen in this one? Are we going to see a repeat of what happened over the weekend?
Potentially. Well, one of the big things for Daejeon is isn't like Andre suspended. Andre Luis is unavailable, and he is the attack pretty much. I mean, in some recent matches, some of the other players have stepped up a bit, so they could be maybe relied upon, but losing him is a very, very big loss for Daejeon. And also Gyeongnam, while they've similarly to Daejeon been a bit inconsistent this season, Gyeongnam, they seem to have this a bit more of a competitive edge in that they try to go the whole 90 minutes. Like, they've scored a lot of goals towards the end of matches, as
against us.
Against Bucheon too. Like the 3 goals in injury time against Bucheon.
I remember that one.
Yeah, so they've done that quite a lot this season, I seem to have noticed. They've equalised or scored winners in the end of matches. So I think that Gyeongnam I think they should edge it. Whereas Daejeon have kind of walked into the playoffs. Gyeongnam, well, they've not dominated. I think, they will just have an edge. And especially as they've got the advantage of only needing a draw, it's a tough task for Daejeon.
Yeah, and that only needing a draw for folks that are new to the K-League 2 playoffs, the higher seeded team only needs a draw in order to move on. So for this one, any result other than a Daejeon win will result in Gyeongnam FC moving up. And then that'll be the same thing for Suwon FC as well when they host this Sunday. All they need is a draw to advance. This is something that was going around on social a little bit. A good friend of the show, Luke Evans, chimed in. He doesn't like it. Personally, I kind of like this because it rewards the regular season. I think it rewards the league standings. It rewards the body of work over a longer period of time. His response to that was, well, that's why you play the game at home. And I mean, look, I want playoffs across the board. So for me, just go straight to pens or something. But I mean, I like this advantage. But anyway, Paul, Daejeon is going to not have the advantage. And we'll hear from Connor Chapman in a little bit about that one. But moving on to Sunday, I want to get your thoughts on this one first. Regardless of who moves on, to me, this is Suwon's game to lose, and I don't see them losing it. I think Suwon is just too good for anybody that's going to come up there and face them. But am I wrong on that one?
Yeah, because they haven't played since November the 7th.
That's a good point.
Whereas Daejeon maybe have played too many games. They looked a bit leggy on Saturday. But for Gyeongnam, They didn't play in midweek last week, and they've probably got if they can win on Wednesday, they would have the momentum. Same with Daejeon, but I think Suwon, although they are a very, very strong team, they haven't played in nearly 3 weeks, and that would be a concern. You know, it's not the same playing like an inter-squad friendly or playing against a university team or any kind of like non-real match situation. So it'll be up to them to see if they can get up to speed, but only needing a draw, that might just be enough for them, if that makes sense. You know, if they don't need to win, they don't need to go all out to try and get that goal or try and get that late win, then they might not need to really get out of second gear.
Yeah, and they are unbeaten in 5 straight against Gyeongnam, dating back to 2017 was the last time that they lost to them. So, hey, they might be rooting for Daejeon along with you this Wednesday, because that would be, well, actually, no, the Gyeongnam would be a more favorable matchup. George, get me out of this. Stop me from talking. What's going to happen on Sunday?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think if a team wins on Wednesday, then they're going to have momentum. But as we've already discussed, like potentially Gyeongnam could go through with just a draw. And that I don't think would actually give a team enough momentum, especially if it was like 0-0 and not a lot of shots on target, that type of thing, then they won't be feeling actually that confident going into a Suwon match. I think that could also change things. The thing with Suwon is that they've been very well this season, but as I've noticed, they did lose to Bucheon twice this season. So they do have it in them to fail occasionally against a team that they shouldn't. So there is definitely a chance that they will not win or they will lose the playoff final. But I still think that Suwon definitely have the advantage. It really, I think, is theirs to lose. They might be a bit rusty, but the fact that they only need a draw and they have such good attacking options and quite a good defense should see them through quite safely.
Yeah. Well, real quick, before we get to Paul's interview with Connor Chapman, George, who's going up from K-League 2?
Suwon.
Paul?
Daejeon.
Yeah.
No, not Suwon. It's got to be Suwon, I think.
Yeah, I'll make it unanimous. I think it's going to be Suwon because they just, like you were saying, George, they just have way too many attacking options. But that's what we think. But earlier this week, Paul, you spoke with Connor Chapman.
Yes, it was last Thursday after the Anyang win, so it might not sound too timely, but do forgive me for that one. But it was before Saturday. It was last Thursday, and here's what he had to say.
Connor, how are you, mate?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, good, especially after Tuesday's win. You must feel the same?
Yeah, it's good. I feel, obviously, we changed coaches, with 10 games left. So I think that we probably weren't getting results before the last 2 games that we felt we should have been getting. We'd played well, but it takes time to adapt to a new coach. And I think you can see now that, we've got a good mix. We've got a Dino back. Most of our first team players are back from injury. We've got more experience. We've got Wooni in centre back. Kuro's back. We've got Dino, Bruno, and Andre all playing well, firing up front. So with Kevin as well. And I think, if there's a time to get some momentum, it's now. And we've won the last 2 games. So hopefully we can take that into the finals.
Yeah, the game against Anyang was only the second time, I think, you had all 4 foreign players start at the same time. It looks like it's all finally come together.
Yeah. Obviously, I was out injured for a big part of maybe half the season, and there was some other key players. We've been quite unlucky with Dongjun, the goalkeeper, Kyoto. Bruno was injured for a period there. Edinho come halfway through the season. So I think obviously we got good results at the start of the season, and then we went through sort of a patch where we're finding, the team to play. Our foreigners are all back fit together, so that always helps. And, we've all played, the 4 foreigners played together the last 2 games. So we've won the last two games as well. So hopefully we can keep going and keep winning and get promotion.
Definitely. I mean, the game before Anyang, that was a huge win as well. Then there was that long break. But the performance was really good against Anyang. In the second half especially, it didn't look like you were struggling for momentum or anything.
Yeah, obviously, being out for 3 weeks, not having that match sharpness. We played trial games and all that, but it's a bit different when you playing in front of fans, playing for points, in big games. So yeah, I think the connection's there. The connection's been there in training, and I think the positive is that up front, Andre, Bruno, Adinho are really getting that connection. And I think Adinho is a big addition to our team. He's come halfway through the season. I think he's just now adjusting, and you can see with the results, he scored 4 goals in the last 2 games. We needed a player that can play in between the lines. He's quick, he can dribble. So I think hopefully he can keep going with his form and take it into the finals.
Yeah, and in those last 2 games, Bruno Bayo, he's had a hand in a lot of the goals, being like with an assist or with his kind of like hold up kind of approach. So he's been brought to score goals, but he's been contributing in other areas, which must be good for him, good for the team.
Yeah, I think every striker wants to score the goal themselves. But yeah, I think as a striker, especially being a tall striker, Korea, sometimes you have to hold up play and let players run off you. And, it's a pivotal part to success sometimes. And, you see Peter Crouch and players like that have played exactly the same. Obviously, they'd love to score the goals themselves, but they're a key part that they bring in the defender and let other people run off them, and it's been working the last few weeks. So hopefully it keeps working.
And you had a few shots yourself on Tuesday night. Is that something you've been trying to work on, trying to add a few more goals to your game?
Yeah, I'd love to personally. I think naturally I'm a bit more defensive, but a team like ourselves, we've got 2 defensive mids now. So we used to have 1 defensive mid, which I was more in a defensive position, nowhere near the goal. But I think obviously it's up to all of us as a team to, try and take that responsibility and score. And I think from myself and Jinsop, the other centre mid, I think, we've really been trying to create more chances, not only for the attacking players, but for ourselves as well. The season probably hasn't gone exactly to plan that, everyone would have liked. We've, changed coach. We've had a lot of injuries, but not just injuries to players, but key positions with experience. And the good thing now is I think everyone's pretty much fit in our team. And we've got experience there, which for games like this is very important.
You mentioned the injuries and stuff like that. It's been a very strange year. You've had the suspensions as well, injuries, the whole COVID thing. Does it feel like things have been stacked against you?
I wouldn't say stacked against, but I would say that looking at the team itself, obviously you can see that we would be able to get better results than what we did in some games. And, sometimes that happens. Sometimes, some teams are more lucky than other teams, and, they don't have injuries, or some things in the game go for them. But at the end of the day, we are where we are because of what we've done. And for us, at the end of the day, we've still got a chance of promotion. We've got 3 games left to get promotion, and anyone can get that. Suwon's not guaranteed promotion. Obviously, they'll be in the last playoff, but I think if we can get through to Suwon, I think we'll have a good chance of getting promotion.
With all these things that have gone wrong, you are still, like you said, sitting in 3rd place. You've got a good chance. Could you have like a sort of a siege mentality going into the playoffs, that even after all this bad luck that we've had, we have still got this excellent opportunity?
Yeah, I think going to a game, you don't really think about, obviously, we've won the last 2 games. So I think even the games before those two games, we weren't getting the luck, we weren't getting the results that we wanted, but we still felt that as a team we played well. When we versed Suwon, we played really well in the first half, and it was a goal from I think 40 yards out. It went over the keeper, and it was probably a goal that it was a great goal, but I think that game minimum we deserved the draw. So we lost that game. The next game we were a little bit unfortunate as well, and we won the last two games. So I think the key thing is for the last 4 or 5 weeks as a team, I think we found our connection, we found what works, and players have confidence now. And I think that's massive going into anything. We've got momentum. And for a team like Suwon who has to take 3 weeks off, it's going to be quite difficult for them to just, switch on for a big game. If we get to that game, as you said, we've got siege mentality and we'll have momentum going to that game. So, obviously they just have to draw that game. But yeah, for us, obviously we just have to think about this week and then take it one game at a time.
Although it would have been disappointing to miss out on growing up automatically, you are finding form at the right time.
Yeah, 100%. But I think if in any country, I think Korea is a country where anyone can win. And we just have to be focused for the whole 90 minutes. As you said, last time we versed Gyeongnam, 2-0 up, and they scored 3 goals in the last 15, 20 minutes. So I think the positive for us is I think defensively we're stronger. We feel a lot stronger now. I think the formation, the players, everyone, it's the same team playing week in, week out, which has been massive for us.
In terms of the playoff games themselves, I think I'm right in saying that you played in the A-League final series before.
Yeah.
What's it like to play in these kind of games? Do they feel different? Because it's not for 3 points. It's kind of a do or die situation. Does that make you a bit more conservative?
Yeah, I think it does. I think everyone's a little bit more conservative. I think obviously in the second half, it opens up because, a team needs to win. And that's just how the games are because, one mistake and you could be over. But at the same time, I think if you're defensively strong, which we've really been focusing on the last few weeks, then I think you probably got a better chance because we've got, good players, Andre, Bruno, Edinho, Kevin up front that can punish teams as well.
How would you assess your own performances this year? Because obviously, as you said, you missed the first sort of third of the season maybe. You came in not quite as fit as you would have wanted to be, but you've settled in now, one of the first named on the team sheet. How do you feel that you've played?
Yeah, it's been a difficult year for me. Obviously, having the injury, I was out for quite a long time. When you're coming back from injury, you're trying to push the limits. You're trying to get back quicker. You're probably not as fit as you want to be when you get back in. Sometimes you're thrown in a deep end a little bit and, you've got to survive. And I'd come back. I felt I'd started because it takes time, right? Even you can do 2-3 months of preseason, but for the first 3-4 games of the season, you're still not, at the level that you want to be. So it does take time. And I think, I've progressed over the year. I think now I'm coming into a point where, I'm running the most in the team. My fitness has come back and getting that match fitness, getting that, the sharpness, the match sharpness is a big thing as well. And yeah, hopefully it's worked out, for the right timing. And these are the games where, players like myself, Bruno, Edinho, and Andre, this is the games why the club brings us to Korea, to step up for the big games.
Well, you've played 2 seasons in K-League 1, nearly a full season in K-League 2. What are the differences between the 2 leagues that you've noticed?
I think in K-League 2, how I would sort of say is more of a championship versus an EPL. I think obviously there's younger players, the budgets, there's some budgets that are the same as K1 or even more in K2, but, the top 2 or 3 teams can easily play in K1. But I think overall, I think it's a league for, younger players. For the bottom, 4 or 5 teams, it's more younger players, but they're agile, they're sharp, they're hungry, but they may not have the same quality to be in K1. But at the same time, it's a difficult league, different style. I think it's quicker in the fact that people press, they fight, and all that sort of stuff. A little bit more like the championship as well. Maybe a little bit more direct. Maybe they don't have the same quality of, they can play out in certain positions. So, they might go a little bit more direct, but at the same time, most players in Korea are pretty much at that same level, and it's a good level. And I think this year, K2 has been very, very strong. You see now, 5 or 6 teams that have been very, very strong. And I think, it's getting better. The clubs are investing more. And I think it's great to have in Korea. We don't have that in Australia. So it's great to have a second division that, is strong for sure.
But I've got a couple of questions here from a lad called Luis Felipe Vecchietti, who co-runs the Daejeon Citizen Sebastian Brazil account on Twitter.
Yeah.
He hosts the Libertadores, the K-League podcast. He says the season you started injured and then came back into the lineup. In the first few games, you were as a defensive midfield player, a centre-back, sometimes even as a sweeper. Do you think these changes in the team tactics made your adaptation a bit harder at the start of the season? And is central defensive midfield player your favourite position to play in?
Yeah, I think obviously players like to play in the same position to get the momentum in, they're playing in that position. I can obviously play in all three positions. I think it depends on the team formation and the tactics and all that sort of stuff. But I think that, I'd prefer playing in CDM. Yeah, obviously, I think it's taken time. I was out for a long time and, I don't want to make excuses for that as well. But yeah, I think now being able to train for 3-4 months in a row, being able to play, hopefully I can, keep progressing and keep showing the Daejeon fans that, why they brought me here.
He's got one more question. He says that the season is completely different because of COVID-19. Did you change something in your mental preparation for this season? The K-League has handled it very well, but Daejeon, the only team that have had a player that's tested positive. How was that handled in terms of the physical preparation and for these last few matches?
Yeah, it's quite difficult because, we're foreigners over here and Korea's hospital system is amazing. They've, dealt with it amazingly. The K-League's been amazing as well. I think it was one of the first leagues to get back playing. I think from a personal perspective, you're a lot more cautious going out, going to a restaurant, going to a cafe, going to shops, because, if you're that player that gets COVID, it affects your team, it affects your club, and it affects you. So I think this year's been difficult in the fact that, for me and my wife, you've had to be a lot more conservative, staying home, not going out as much. You can't really enjoy Korea as much. But yeah, from our point of view, the last three weeks, we pretty much trained as two teams. So there was half the team that were in the clubhouse. They trained together, that come into contact with the player. And then the players that lived outside, we all trained together for 2 weeks. And then, after that, we come together. So we've been training for the last week together and we got a good result. So I don't think it's affected us too much, which is great. And hopefully, we can keep building on the good results.
Yeah, well, good luck this weekend. Hopefully we get a result. I say we, as you know, I'm a big fan. But hopefully we can have a nice extended season and make that jump up to K-League 1.
Yeah, for sure. I think, that would be great, obviously, for the fans and all that sort of stuff. And, it's been a difficult year for everyone. And I think, anything can happen from there.
Cool. All right. Thanks, mate.
정주성,